thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner.
And today we are talking about the Divine Feminine, and specifically what is the Divine Feminine. And we really wanted to kick off with, I suppose, a bit of a mantra to kind of keep front of mind as we're exploring the topic today, which is that I create the space to tune in to my Divine Feminine, because it's something that we all have, but that we can feel disconnected from. And so this is really for this half an hour, we're going to dive in and really unpack what that means and where we can find that in our lives, and why it's important to honour the Divine Feminine within ourselves as women, and as men too. We all have both the Divine Feminine and a Divine Masculine side, so we're going to sort of look at both of those, and we'll kick off with Julie on this one.
Oh gosh, that's a bit of pressure. Do you know what I really want to start with is just the understanding of what the Divine Feminine is. I think it's a really old term, but I think part of it is kind of new age, and you kind of don't totally get what it is, and maybe it's a bit hippie and not really sure. And I really want to get the concept that it's a spectrum, that the Divine Feminine sits at one end in the extreme, and the Divine Masculine sits at the other end in the extreme. Yes. And there's all the shades in between, that you're never one or the other, although in certain moments you might choose to call on the powers, I suppose, of one aspect more than the other. There's usually one in dominance in whatever situation you're in, but that you are always a spectrum, and it's just about really looking at, are there archetypes, are there, I don't know, ruminations about those characteristics that you want to embody, look at, pull apart, see voids in. I don't know, that's kind of
and
what
what's the benefit of awakening that in ourselves? What's the benefit of tuning into it?
So let's start with what the masculine and what the feminine represent in terms of characteristics. Yes. So the Divine Feminine is really what we talk about when we're talking about yin, kind of soft, gentle, feminine energy of nurturing and nourishing and being still and quiet and internal and contemplative and creative.
And receiving.
And receiving is the really big part. Is the feminine is there to receive pleasure, to receive whatever it is the masculine has to offer us. So the masculine is there to do it, but the feminine creates the impetus and the creation and the, that really feminine, creative, sitting internally and making magic, looking at dreams. Those things are all very feminine. And then, of course, you look at also the part of the feminine that is seduction and sensuality. So we live so much in the masculine in this world. So the masculine is the art of the doing, the achieving, the financial success, the moving forwards, the very busy mind. What else is in the masculine? I can't even think right now.
That's a pretty good spectrum though, and it is those kind of that career focus, the mental kind of capacity to fit stuff in and break things apart and plan and organise, and and we're not kind of trying to discount those things because they're fantastic, and as women we have all of those things too,
and they serve us,
and they absolutely serve us, but sometimes we can tend to let those things crowd out the space that we need to nurture the Divine Feminine, nurture our feminine traits.
And also because we live in a world that is so much about achieving and doing and being busy, and we tend to sit so much in the masculine that in the process the feminine is shut down. Yes. You start to lose touch with it, you get out of balance with it, and you live more in one than in the other. And when we look at seduction and sensuality, what's the difference between sensuality and sex is pretty much what's the difference between the feminine and the masculine. You're looking at the feminine, and seduction is the art of receiving. It's the art of embodying a moment and a feeling and kind of that longing, urging sensation of enjoyment and pleasure. And the masculine is the culmination of that. It's the physical act and the orgasm.
Yeah,
the final product. Yeah, the kind of, the doing part of it, the explosion part of it. And the feminine is all the juiciness that gets you there. So when we're looking at what is sensuality and what is seduction, it's really part of how connected am I to my Divine Feminine. Because you can't, I don't think, really have extended massive orgasms, have an amazing connection to your body and your sensuality and sexuality through sensuality unless you're connected to your Divine Feminine, which is why we really want to bring that in to consciousness, don't we? Why we really want to have those discussions, because we recognised that in ourselves, that I don't know, when I think, well, even when maybe you've got a different story, Bridge, when I think about my story, I think about being a teenager and in my 20s, and it was very much about, I think, a masculine version of what a woman is. Outwardly very sexual, I don't know, push-up bras and low-cut tops, mini skirts, sex in the act of doing and looking a particular way or performing a particular way. And
it's kind of like, it was all the outward appearances, but there was almost like an internal disconnect.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think I became pregnant, and I started to all of a sudden move very much inward. And that's where my power of the divine feminine begun, and I had these amazing birth experiences. And then when I became mother and took on that mother archetype, I embodied it so much because I was choosing such a conscious parenting pathway that I lost myself along the way. And I think in doing that, I started to think this version or this box is what a mother looks like. So I'm just going to tuck away the slut, and I'm going to tuck away the super sexy, and I'm going to tuck away, you know,
because that's not what a mother is.
Yes, and I'm no longer now. I'm no longer comfortable with doing that or being that, and in fact, I judge women that are that.
Yeah, wow. And I identify with that too. That's really interesting. Yeah.
So then I kind of looked back on my story and thought, well, you know, 7 years later, parenting years later, oh my God, I can't feel comfortable in my skin, and I don't know what my divine feminine is, and why can't I express my beauty, and why do I feel closed off or shut down when I'm in social situations, or why can't I just live authentically me? Why are my orgasms not amazing? Why, well, you know, all these questions started coming up for me, and that's what started my journey into what is the divine feminine, and where is that void sitting for me, and why is it there? And hence the peeling back the layers, which I hope we touch on in each of these podcasts, is what's the stuff that's got in the way of that authenticity and that connection to the juiciness of life. Because now I look at women, and instead of, you know, in my 20s, it was very much a masculine comparison, as opposed to in my 30s, my view of women and sisterhood is very much about collaboration. Yeah. And women inspire women in that space. So now I look at a beautiful woman, or a woman who's enjoying something magnificent about herself, and I love it. And I want to look at it.
You just want a piece of it. You know?
I want a piece of it. Yeah. Yes, I do. And so now I look at those women, and I celebrate how, you know, internally I kind of smile. It's what I mean by celebration. Yeah. I celebrate what it is that they're representing to me, and now I'm able to then do the steps of pulling apart, okay, what is that? Why am I attracted to it? Where am I owning it or not owning it? So I think when you're seeing something you really want, break it down into those steps, because that's where the gold is. Anyway, that was a really long journey.
No, I love it. And one thing I really want to pick up on is that idea, you know, the concept of the sexual energy that we have is as feminine women, and why we feel like that we need to deny an expression of some of that, you know, like why we feel it's so uncomfortable in kind of owning our slut, you know, and even that word is really jarring.
It still makes me cringe, that word, a little.
Yeah, but you know, but I think anything that does make us cringe, well, why? Like, where is that coming from?
Totally.
Because, you know, ultimately we're going to, if we don't express something, we're going to repress it, and it's going to come out in some other area of life that might not be very constructive. You know, it's much more powerful for us to kind of go into those points that are uncomfortable and say, okay, well, how can I healthily express that? Because of what it means to be a full human, you know, is to actually enjoy our sexual sides and, you know, find ways to find pleasure, you know, and really kind of cultivate it in a way that's healthy and, you know, also energizing. You know, like sexual energy is what creates things in the world. It really, you know, is. And often, like, we've all got it, but we don't recognize where we put it. You know, often if you don't feel like having sex with your husband because you've got young children, you know, then your energy is massively going into your parenting, or it's going into your work if you're really inspired. But we actually can choose where it goes once we bring some awareness to what our physiology is telling us.
You can utilise that juice. Yeah. And that is sensuality.
It is.
That is living life from the point of seduction. Being everything that is a sensual sense. Every part of our senses, including our intuition, is open and receiving, and we get pleasure out of all of those. We get pleasure out of our fingertips touching something, and we get pleasure out of looking at a beautiful flower or a stunning woman.
And that comes from mindfulness too, doesn't it? Because
yes, the feminine is being in the moment. The feminine is presence. The masculine is moving forwards.
Future focus.
Yes. And I really love that sensuality, when we really pull it apart and sit in it, calls us into such presence, because all of a sudden that longing keeps us in a moment.
Yeah.
You know?
It sounds so seductive just talking about it.
I love this stuff, and I really want to do this stuff in our retreat. And I just think there's so much that we can pull apart for women that listening to our podcasts that maybe just starts to awaken it. Because women, when they're juiced up on that life, sexual energy, sensuality,
it's life
juice,
force, it's prana, it's whatever you want to call it.
They're spectacular. They're magnetic. And the reason they're magnetic is because particularly the heart chakra is open. And our heart chakra is, we know that area of the heart has the biggest electromagnetic field around it. That's why we say women in their sensuality are magnetic. Literally, that magnetic force field gets larger. So what are you doing about your heart space and your décolletage? Are you, allowing your shoulders, you're covering it up?
Yeah.
Are you adorning it? Are you allowing your shoulders to be pressed back and you're opening up that chest space? Because even just the act, I would love if you're sitting there now just to do what I'm doing and you can't see, which is literally put your hands on your heart and then move your shoulders backwards and just slide your hands from where your heart space is, kind of across your breast and décolletage. Just move it slowly and open up like that and just see how it feels. And just try that posture several times today where you are. And even that, I guarantee you, will change the way that you feel, will change how connected you are to your divine feminine, and will change how connected you are to your sexual energy.
I love that.
Oh, I love it. I think about it all the time. And sometimes I find myself, hunched over or, busy doing something on my computer or whatever. And I think, oh my gosh, hang on. Chest back, open up. And someone will walk in the room and I'll go, oh, hello. And all of a sudden that heart space magnetic energy is there simply from changing my posture and bringing awareness to what that magnet is.
And so, almost changing your physiology is almost changing your perspective.
Yes.
Isn't it? Just kind of getting that opening.
Yes.
It's like in yoga when you put your legs upside down on a wall and it just gives you that different view. You're no longer kind of caught
like
up
a pattern interrupt.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It changes what you're stuck in the constant moving in whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't know, rut. It changes it. And all of a sudden there's awareness, there's presence, and there's a change in your energy and where it's going. It's an incredibly powerful thing just to do.
I think it's really powerful too when you're feeling really in your head, and kind of caught up in the busyness and the kind of to-do list. It's just taking whatever it is, whether it's that heart opening exercise, whether it's some other kind of mindfulness technique. What can you do to just bring yourself back to that present, sensual, receiving side?
And that is exactly what the divine feminine is. And I just can't tell you enough, when you're really sitting in that, it's extraordinary. I know that every single woman listening will have several memories of when they've really truly sat in that, when they've been so sensually open, all of your senses that feel like they're on fire and everything feels like it's 100 times bigger and greater than what it, possibly appeared yesterday. And you're receiving pleasure, whether that's sitting down to a beautiful meal or a cup of tea you love, or from a lover, or enjoying a really gorgeous cuddle and sniff with your child.
Yeah. It
doesn't matter what that sensual moment is, when you're really connected and your heart feels like it's going to explode out of your chest. That's presence. That's connection to your divine feminine. And just imagine if that juice, that moment that you feel that bliss, could actually be where you live your life from more permanently, where there's more of that. What space would that create in your life? What space would that create within yourself? And how different would you be with the people in your community, with your husband, with your partner, with your children? How different would just that shift a little bit more into the divine feminine from the doing of the masculine? How much would that shift change your world?
And it's a practice, isn't it? It's one of those things.
Oh, it's not, bang, today I'm in my divine feminine when I've been constantly running in my masculine and shut down. It's never going to happen like that. It's a practice, and it's stepping little things each day and bringing consciousness, and slowly over time it expands how much you sit in that. So maybe where to go from here is, what are other things you could do to connect with your divine feminine if you're feeling like you really want to go there and explore more and expand more in that? What are the things you can do? So one is opening up your heart magnet, which we talked about before. Other things would be really, how do you call in that sacred woman is presence, anything that takes presence. So the feeling of something. So instead of just touching something or just touching your skin or putting your clothes on, focus on how it feels to your fingertips, how it feels on your skin. Just the presence of sensation is bringing that in and getting pleasure.
Even when you're having a shower and you're washing yourself, actually feeling your hand on your skin, washing yourself.
Yes.
Even that is so powerful.
Oh, that's massive. And for some women, even just touching their bodies and their skin can be too hard to even go there. So forget self-love. We're not even at that spectrum.
Yeah.
Just even touching your skin can be painful. So you start small. You're not going to go from self-loathing into self-love. You're going to have steps in between. Yeah. And those steps start with really small things. Noticing a breath in and how that feels in your body. Noticing a beautiful flower as you're walking past and seeing how it feels when you receive that pleasure. Touching your fingers when you put your rings on and how it feels when you do that. Touching your hair when you brush it and feeling how that brush feels on your scalp. Little things that work up to gratitude and loving of the body and the vessel that you're in. That's all part of the divine feminine and being present. Meditation, prayer, anything that connects you with your body, yoga, movement of any sort.
Even stream of consciousness writing's lovely too,
gorgeous.
Just to kind of get a piece of paper.
Intuition is the divine feminine. The ability to receive information without judgment and that voice in your head taking over. Intuition is the divine feminine. So anything that's allowing your intuition to come through, even just really listening to that gut feeling. So do I want this or that for lunch? Don't think about it with your head. Just ask your body and go with that. And each time you make a choice, do I want to go left or right in this street? Left. Every time you allow your intuition the opportunity to make a choice and without thinking about it, you do it, it expands how much more of that is coming into your world.
And how much you can tune into it. I love that.
Yeah. So powerful. Creativity is the divine feminine. So how much do we allow creativity in our lives? This can be in the form of art. And your art could be anything. Your art could be making daisy chains. Your art could be painting. It could be drawing. It could be mindful colouring, which is massive at the moment.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. It could be anything, knitting, crocheting, creating gardens. Creativity can be anything.
And in fact, there's so many opportunities for that because our children are always inviting us into their world to create. How would it feel to spend a bit more time there with them?
Yes.
And actually explore your feminine in that way.
Or... because the only thing I don't like about that is when we move into creativity and being like a play school art and then it's about the kids and you're back in the mother archetype rather than it being something that fills your soul.
I guess it depends on how the kids are, whether you're able to play alongside as opposed to
that's more where I was going. Yeah, exactly. So whatever the activity is, set it up that they have an aspect of it, but that you can still explore the part that makes you feel amazing. So creativity is and no one has no creativity. That is such rubbish. That's just more numbing and more lies that we tell ourselves to avoid going into the divine feminine. Because it's easier just to say, I can't, I'm not talented, I don't have time.
And it's easy to be on autopilot, really. And our brain, if we're creating neural pathways that say that we do this and we think this, well, that's kind of our default, isn't it? So, it's part of kind of feeling into a different way of being. Inviting some things that perhaps might be a little bit challenging, but that ultimately are kind of beautiful.
And awakening.
Go there. And awakening,
And it's amazing. They give you juice when you do something creative that you just enjoy doing for the sake of doing it and because it brings you presence and you love the thing that comes out of it at the end. And that's more pleasure and more beauty in your world. That's the divine feminine.
Yeah.
You can't do all these other parts that you think. You can't pick and choose necessarily with the divine feminine. If you're disowning one aspect, you're never going to fully be able to experience the really high highs of it.
And I mean, exploring the divine feminine is not about kind of, catching yourself when you think you're being too masculine to try and go there, because in fact the masculine really serves you. And I mean, we know this, like, that masculine traits, we all have a balance of both, and both men and women might tend to express a little bit more feminine or a little bit more masculine. Probably know men who tend to be a little bit more feminine. They're a bit more kind of reflective. They're probably a little bit more in touch with their emotions. They're a little bit more comfortable to just be quieter and more intuitive. But we know the masculine traits are the things that help people overcome things like terminal cancer. Like, they're really, really great traits to have, and we never want to disown them. But we really kind of both of our perceptions are that in this pace of life we've got, that we're kind of almost forcing ourselves to live in that high energy all the time. And in doing that, we kind of lose that connection, that with that softness, that pleasure, that receiving, which is so beautiful and so much a part of being human.
And it allows you access to better sensuality, better sexuality.
Yeah, and also better connection within your relationships too.
And within yourself.
Yeah.
Connection to your body and your soul and your life juice is through the divine feminine. So the masculine, absolutely so. But we're not, I really love that you said that we're not disowning it in a moment, berating ourselves for being masculine.
I mean, because I just wouldn't get anything done if I didn't go there.
Exactly right.
If we were sitting there making daisy chains all the time, I don't think we'd get very much done. It'd be really pleasurable, but it wouldn't get much done.
So true. It's so true. So yeah, I really love that you brought that up as well, because it absolutely is that. You don't need to change what you're doing. You might just choose to invite more in, or look at why you resist doing the things that are on the spectrum of the divine feminine.
Even just observing why you might be resisting something is bringing consciousness to something that you previously might not have had awareness about. And that even is just a step closer to saying yes a bit more to those softer activities, to those activities that really nourish, to to not caring about what time it is, and just actually being really present and letting your afternoon go the way it needs to go for you to feel full and soft and open and all those lovely things.
So what else would we do to connect to the divine feminine? So we've talked about being present. We've talked about body movement and things that we can do to say gratitude to our bodies in the process. Then there's processes through adornment. So adornment can mean anything and a spectrum of things. So that can be putting on makeup, putting on lipstick, doing your hair, putting on a necklace, putting on some rings. Adornment is a process of, it doesn't mean to make yourself more beautiful to the outside world. It really is calling you to authentically adorn yourself the way that you're feeling, or the way that you need honouring, or the way that you want to be out there in the world for people to really see who you are. It's a process of owning your authenticity without any guilt or fear or shame. So, look, I still struggle with this one. I think I'm good at adornment with scarves. I love scarves, and I love putting them on around my neck and my décolletage, and I love the colour, and they're amazing. Sometimes it's necklaces, sometimes it's rings and earrings. It's makeup that I struggle with. And this is really interesting. Well, when I think about my teenage years and my 20s, I could never be seen without makeup. So that's how extreme.
But that's still me. I don't go out without makeup.
Oh, don't you? So this is really interesting. I feel like this needs another podcast, because I have spent so much of my life pulling this apart, to the point where I even met my now husband back then, and I would sleep over at his house. I literally
would sleep in your makeup.
Would sleep in my makeup, and then to the extreme, I would get up before he's woken up to fix my makeup, to get back into bed, to look amazing when he woke up. How messed up is that?
But I would say that that's not an uncommon story.
No, but now I think,
but
where was my self-esteem, my self-worth? Yeah. Where was my connection to my authenticity and to my divine feminine? Because I'm a goddess regardless of what I'm adorning myself with. Yeah. And the fact that I can only be seen one way is a real self-worth issue, that therefore I'm not okay if I'm this.
Yes.
Then had kids, moved through motherhood, got rid of the makeup because it was too much for hassle and time consuming, and I couldn't be bothered. And then my self-care and pleasure started to disappear. So with the shutdown and the moving away from the divine feminine came the disowning, or I'm going to say for myself, dishonouring of who I am and my beauty.
I really identify with that too, actually. But go on.
No, I'm interested.
Well, just because I look back to the sort of first year or so of being a mother, and like, you know, I'd wear horrible clothes and just almost kind of not give myself permission to, like, beautify myself, or, you know, I'd almost kind of, and I know that this, my self-talk was, or I'm kind of not important now, like, you know, I've got this role, I've got this child to look after, kind of throw my hair up, slap something on.
It's the self-sacrifice of the mother archetype.
Yeah, I think it really is.
Yeah.
And now I've come back to my balance, you know. But I think that sometimes women can get stuck in that for years.
Yeah, definitely. And this is part of the divine feminine. I think through motherhood, the shutdown that happens is that we really start to, our self-worth and our sense of self and who we are and the woman that we now are based on all these experiences that we've had, all these wounds, is where does that now sit? Where does our adornment and our divine feminine and our almost our altar to ourselves and our self-worth, where is that now? And so now my struggle is to put makeup on. So I mostly don't wear, if you know me, I mostly don't wear.
You went so far the other way.
I got so far the other way. I stopped wearing makeup totally. And in fact, even went so, this is my extremism, isn't it? Even went so far that I judged people who had to wear makeup.
Wow. So like, it's almost like become a political statement.
Well, it became so much part of my value system that it was like, well, you should just be okay with who you are because you're who you are.
Yeah.
Don't judge.
Which is really you talking to yourself.
I'm not that anymore, can I just say? But I can see where my thought processes were.
Yeah.
And now I sit so differently because now I realise that what was judgment was actually insecurity.
Yeah.
And what I really wanted was I was still stuck in my masculine comparison of them and me. So I had to make them wrong and me right. And there was my, you know, value systems and belief systems in my head. And now I look at women that are beautiful and I have that moment where I go, I wish I had to put makeup on today. Why didn't I? Or, you know, whatever it is, the thing that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And so now for me, the occasions that I choose to put makeup on are because I want to do that for myself. It's not because I'm going somewhere in particular or because I'm meeting someone in particular or whatever. It's because I've woken up on that day and I've tuned into my intuition and my divine feminine. I thought, today I really want to adorn myself in every way that I can. Today I want to be as beautiful as I want to be. Today I want to be seductive and I'm going to have bright lips. Tomorrow I want to be sensual and I'm going to have smoky eyes. I don't know. Whatever it is, now for me it's a process of, because on that day I felt like I really want to do that for me. That doesn't mean that the only way for me to adorn myself is that, because 90% of the time, as you know, Bridget, I don't wear makeup. But I will choose other ways to adorn myself and feel like that's really good. I still feel amazing. It's about the feeling of it. If I'm not feeling amazing, then how am I not honouring myself?
It's kind of almost radical, though. That
is a bit
whole
radical,
idea of just going, today I feel like this and I'm going to do this.
Yes.
You know, and break the kind of, any kind of routine or any kind of, you know, preconceived belief around
it's not
how
my
to be.
head, it's my intuition.
You're tuning into how you feel.
Yes, exactly.
It's really powerful.
Which is the masculine to the feminine. So, and you and I have talked about this, that I really would love women to choose to wear makeup, to have waxes, to have pedicures, to have, I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because they really love it for themselves. And when they do it, they feel amazing. And not out of insecurity, fear and shame if they don't do it.
Yeah. Not out of some kind of subordination to some idea that as a woman you should do this.
Or a belief system that actually needs peeling back and looking at.
Where's that come from?
And if you're sitting more in the mental state of this is where I'm going, that's the masculine.
Yeah.
So we're talking about tuning into your feelings, and you're doing it because you're adorning your own altar, yourself, your body. You're tuning in, you're working on your self-worth, you're working on your body image, you're wanting to be as authentic as you can be as a presentation to the world when you walk out. And just the process of allowing yourself that pleasure, of not denying it, because how much do we deny pleasure? I won't wear that top today because that's a special top. I won't wear those shoes because I don't want to ruin them and I'll save them for a special occasion. I won't have that cup of coffee today because that's my special coffee. How many times a day do we deny ourselves pleasure because we have these belief systems and thought processes that are really just covering up I'm going to just say issues.
Yeah.
The broader issue. And the lack of connection to the feminine.
Because it's actually liberating to actually tune in and go,
really
what do I feel like today?
Yes.
You know, not on autopilot or not kind of the talk that, you know, the self-talk that goes on in the head. What do I actually feel like, you know?
And when you meet that and that sweet spot hits and you've got life juice and pleasure and sensuality radiating out from you, because you will if you're filling up those feelings.
Yeah.
That is magnetic. That transforms your life. That creates the power of manifestation.
And when you're also in that place, it's so interesting to observe how other people relate to you.
Yes.
You know, when you are kind of really sure of yourself in that moment and you're really kind of coming from that place that's truly you, people are drawn to that.
Of course they are. It's the divine feminine. It's magnetic. Get on that, life juice.
I love that. Life juice, you know, it's trademark it.
So I just want to do quickly before we end, adorning ourselves then also moves to the spaces. So how can you create more beauty in your space? So you are receiving more beauty through sensuality in the space that you are living in or creating or working in. And that really is where you want to, it doesn't have to be big expensive things. It can be works of art you've made. It can be Kmart things you've brought.
It can be things you pick from the garden. You're
Or
taking
the op
the
shop.
space. Yeah, or the op shop. Yeah, wherever it is. Something
Anything.
that resonates.
Something that resonates, that makes you look at it and just have that moment of joy because you're loving looking at it. You're essential oils, you're loving smelling it. There's just about creating pleasure for all of your senses in your home.
And I mean, the really importance of that too is that when we can surround ourselves with beauty, however that looks for us, that's when we tap into our own inner inspiration.
It is.
That's what allows...
Because creation and inspiration is the divine feminine.
Yeah. But I mean, even at a deeper level, our inspiration for our life, you know, our soul's inspiration, you know, is really fed by surrounding ourselves with things that are beautiful to us.
Following your bliss.
And beautiful to us, not beautiful to whoever says that this is the nice trend to have.
Yeah.
What really, you know, what makes you... You know, what makes your heart open? What brings tears to your eye? What is it that, you know, really just kind of lights you up? And then choose more of that.
Oh, I so agree with that. I really think we have to wrap it up there.
We do.
But I loved that.
Yes.
I really hope that if you're listening, you really got something amazing out of that, and that over the next week you choose something to ignite your sensuality. And I just want to quickly touch on our retreat that's coming up on the 8th of November. So that will be held in Bomb Beach in Melbourne. We have a most amazing 150-year-old building that looks out on the ocean that we'll be doing that retreat from. We will be moving you through all layers of your belief and value systems that need peeling away to get back into connection with your sensuality and your divine feminine. So if you're really feeling like there's a void, please invest in yourself to have that, to bring it into your world and into your life. So you can connect with Bridget through suburbansandcastles.com. And what is your movie coming up?
The Empowerment Project.
Perfect.
Which is just perfect. We're both going to be there that night. And it's just all about celebrating women and celebrating ordinary women doing extraordinary things.
And what's the charity that you're donating to for that?
So the charity, because we choose a local cause or a charity every month, and it's really to kind of put the spotlight on them. And this one is called Sister Works. So it's all about empowering migrant women and refugee women through meaningful work. So it's giving them a way to share their crafts or to share their own inspirations and get money for that, because that's, you know, we know when women are disempowered in the home, it's often because they don't have an income themselves. And so this is just such a powerful way to really empower women.
I just love that.
Yeah, so, and we've actually got a special running up until the 14th of October for our retreat, which is that if you use the code empowerment when you book the retreat, you'll get $50 off. So it's just a perfect alignment of the two leading up to the retreat, because they're really both in that space.
It is.
And if you want to connect with Jules for any soul sessions or kind of unpacking your story, go to naturopathicbirth.com.au.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on the mothering journey.
Bye.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.